Hi, folks. Lloyd Easter's here. I want to talk about something that's pretty near and dear to all of our hearts, and that's how do we double our money? How do we invest more, make more returns, and really double our money? And there's a very common rule of 72, that talks about how to double your money every certain period of time. So we're going to talk about that today. So how do you double your money, right? So the rule of 72, quite simply, is this, right? So if Rule of 72 says that over a 10-year period of time, or any period of time, we'll discuss the formula here in a second, is if we want to get from 500,000 in our account right now, in the next 10 years, what do we want? We want to get it to $1 million. So we want to double that in the next 10 years. So if you're 50 right now and you want to have double the amount of money in your investment account in 10 years, what has to happen? What does the Rule of 72 tell us? Well, the Rule of 72 tells us that at 10%, money doubles every 7.2 years. So what's that formula? So if you divide 7.2 by 10 equals 72, therefore, Rule of 72. Okay? So let's look at on a 10-year period. So that's a 10% return, right, is kind of unrealistic. The market returns on average 8 to 9% depending on the time period you look at. So if we want to look at a more reasonable rate, so if we divide 7.2 divided by, say, a 7% return, that's around 10 years. And that's a little more reasonable expectation of return on a portfolio. So if we were to get 7% per year for 10 years, then we would double our money in 10 years, right? So let's look at what the market actually gives us. So if we were to say, okay, hey, if the market returned 7% every single year for 10 years, we would absolutely double our money. So if we started here at $300,000, and maybe that's your account right now, maybe that's in your 401k, maybe you have a combination of 401k, an IRA, and an investment account, doesn't really matter. The return is what we're looking at 7%. Then we would ultimately double our money, right? So that's not taking into account dividends. That's not taking into account any deposits or anything like that. That's just a $300,000 account at 7% return every year. We would double our money, right? But the market doesn't deliver that, right? The market doesn't deliver 7% every year. It fluctuates up and down. So if we were to take just the market, right? This is the S&P 500, which is a good proxy for the market as a whole. We say, what did it do on the 10-year period from January 2010 to the end of 2019? Well, you can see that it started right here at 300,000. We had our account there, and it almost tripled in that time period, right? So that was about a 13.4% annualized return, okay? So you notice that it didn't return that every single year, right? Because we had periods where the market didn't perform, right? But overall, this is one of the longest running bull markets that we've had in the history of the stock market, was during this period, right? And so now we're getting into a period of more volatility, right, that affects our accounts. So let's look at, and this time period here had about a 12.4% volatility, right? And let's see if I spell that wrong, and I did, but that's okay. So then we look at a different time period. Let's end December 31, 2017, right? So now we have part of the recession in there. We have this dip. We have a small dip here. And so the market ended up returning 8.4% at a 15% volatility, right? So we took our account from 300,000 and we little over doubled it, right? So 8.4%. So the volatility was a little higher, right? So we didn't increase, and the return was a little lower. So we were able to double our money in that time period, but didn't triple it like we did in the previous time period. All right. So let's continue to look at time periods, right? So let's look at the what we call the lost decade, right? So this is actually an 11-year period from January 1, 2000 to December 31, 2010. And we see we started at 300,000 and we basically ended at 300,000. What do we have? We had this long period. We had the big drop here, right? And so while we had this increase, what we ended up with in this decade was 0.35% annualized return, right? And if you look at you take 2010 out of it, then we had a minus 1% return, right? So, so you see that we don't get 7% returns every single year, even if the annualized average is annualized return, or the average return is 7% or greater. It doesn't mean that we're going to double our money in that time period, because volatility matters, right? So what are some key takeaways here? Why is the rule of 72 important? Well, the rule of 72 is important because, number one, it provides a guide, right? It gives us an estimate of about how much return we would need in order to be able to double our money. So it affects how we invest our money on a regular basis. It also tells us the importance of investing early, right? So the sooner you start investing, the more time you have to compound your money and earn greater returns and double your money quicker, right? So, and then volatility, we'll spell it right this time, is important. It plays a key, because we know that the lower the volatility, in the same annualized return, will have a greater dollar return with lower volatility. Okay, so volatility is important, and then also asset allocation is important. What you invest in impacts your return. So you invest heavily in equities in the 2000s, then you suffered. If you invested heavily in equities in the last 10 years, you were rewarded for that. So how you invest and what is your asset allocation makes a difference. Time periods are important as well. So if you have 10, 15, 20 years left till you get to retirement, then how you invest is critical to your success after retirement, because we don't know what this next 10 or 15 years holds for us. So what does this time period really look like, and how can you double your money in that time period and do it well? And then the other important thing is you got to stick with it, right? Because if you are out of the market and you are not investing, you are not paying attention to what you're doing, you're not saving regularly to increase your account, you will not achieve the success that you need. So you have to stick with it, but you have to have an investment strategy that works for you so that you can maximize and take advantage of the rule of 72, and to be able to compound your returns over time so that you can design the life you don't want to retire from, right? Create the wealth that you need in order to retire with freedom that you want, and be able to enjoy the second half of your life, all right? So I hope this helps. If you have any other questions, shoot me an email, comment, subscribe so that you can learn more, get into my coaching program, and love to help you whatever your needs may be. All right, take care.